ask now so that it's recorded. So we are recording this meeting, so everyone, by continued participation in the meeting, is giving their consent to being recorded. This will be posted on the district website. So I will call the meeting to order at 6:38 p.m. and I will ask for a volunteer to take the minutes. Okay, thank you, Laura. So again, 6:38. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the meeting of October 7th, 2020. I have a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve.
So Linda made the motion.
Second.
Laura seconded. So the minutes were attached to the call to meeting. Is there any changes, corrections? Seeing none, we have to take a roll call vote. Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Yes.
And Member Mills, yes. So the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is continued review of the superintendent's proposed goals. So the superintendent shared a draft of the goals with the subcommittee. And as a reminder, we want to make sure that when we share things, we don't want to be able to see the anybody else's changes, right? So we sent them again to make sure that they were just a document and not an editable Google Doc, so there was no deliberations behind the scene, and asked individual members to send back their input. I think Member Woodland, you sent something, right?
Yeah, I did.
And I sent something as well. Member Kirschenbaum is nodding as though you also sent something.
Yes.
And I don't know if Kelly was able to as well. She's been a little bit out the past couple days. So I guess the question is, Daryl, did you have the opportunity to take that input in and revise?
So yes and no, because some of them came in a little later, so I didn't have the opportunity to spend time on them today. I had some other things going on right before this meeting, so I couldn't jump into it, but I did make some modifications. So perhaps what we could do is, I'm just opening up the document that had the changes. So maybe what I'll do, Ken, do you want me to share my screen?
Yes, that'd be good.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay. I have too many tabs open.
Yep.
It's like the story of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
All right. So this is the updated version, and I have to say, thank you. Like, I was able to incorporate some of the different items we talked about. I think as I looked at not only this document but also the document that kind of lays out kind of the plan, I'm definitely going to have to spend some more time looking at kind of an outline in terms of breaking this down so we can have the basic plan action steps that go along with this. But I think ultimately it's okay. What are the outcomes associated with these SMART goals? So let me go through the first, these first four. So student learning goal: by June 2021, superintendent and his team will provide an outline identifying and prioritizing improvements to technology, resource acquisition, community outreach communication, and the implementation of modern learning techniques to be included in the next strategic plan. So basically, what this does is that it provides us the opportunity to really define some of the different items that we're looking at in terms of tech, in terms of what we're trying to then bring into the fold as we move forward with modern learning. And I had a question around, what's modern learning? What does modern learning, encompass? And as I've kind of worked through some of the concepts of what modern learning is and what I've, my interpretation is of it, it's really around taking that extra step to ensure that you're providing students the necessary tools and actionable items that allow them to access the curriculum and move forward in a way that I would call it. It's almost like 21st century learning. It reminds me an awful lot of that. So and I have to say, Laura did a nice job kind of sharing some of the language, and I appreciated that, Laura, around defining some of these a little better. Because again, some of them were a little more loose prior to us meeting tonight. So coming back to this and having definitive language around what we're looking at in terms of technology, community outreach, resource acquisition, those types of things, and then tying it back to the student plan. So if we want to go through each one of these and then talk about it, that's fine. Or I can look at all four.
I mean, maybe what you could do is look at all four first, and then maybe we could go through them each on the next document, the one that has the
plan.
The plan.
Sure. So the second one, by June 2021, the superintendent working with district and school leadership will promote diversity, equity, and inclusion district-wide by defining and outlining the foundational framework, mindsets, and sustainable practices needed to transform our culture. Again, what this does is this provides the opportunity to really show, okay, here's the framework from which we'll kind of move forward with as a school district. And I can tell you, we've already reached out to a consulting firm that specializes in bringing these types of issues to the forefront with school districts. And Director Keenan and I have met with this firm, at least one time. We're going to probably do it a couple more times. I know Brendan's meeting with them tomorrow. So again, their whole role is around really outlining it and helping districts pull this type of process together. So you're not trying to do it by reading a book here or having a speaker come in there. It's really a more holistic approach. So that's that. If we scroll down to the two district improvement goals, the first one on the left, by June 2021, the superintendent will establish and initiate a process to develop a new strategic plan to include feedback from stakeholders. So this is really around what will the process look like as we move forward for the strategic plan. And what I want to ensure that we do is look back at what we did last time, kind of survey people about, okay, how did that work? Did you feel as though you were heard? What other type of medium should we use to gain more information about moving forward? And then really kind of plan out how this has to work, because as we look at our district, I think we're kind of at a point of we've done a lot of great things with our strategic plan. I still think there's much work to do. So looking forward, how can we do that, and what might that plan look like? And then ultimately, the last goal, district improvement goal number 2, by spring of 2021, the superintendent will establish and implement a system that enhances the communication between home and school for families that will include gathering and analyze student retention trends. So really, that's looking specifically at what we're doing around our communication and meeting the needs of families, so that we understand here are reasons maybe why they're leaving, and we can also provide the reasons as to maybe why they should stay. So again, that's something that we've been talking about for a little while in terms of retention, and especially this year as we look at the precipitous drop off of students going from 20 to 21 because of COVID and remote learning and hybrid and the unknowns associated with everything that's been going on. So those are the two items associated with how that might play out. So, and so that's that. Come on. Okay, is that up?
Yes.
Okay. So again, this is an area that I think, I continually want to work on and modify in terms of what the action steps might look like, because again, those are the things that can look a little different. Ultimately, you have that goal at the end where you want to get to it. How you get to it, depending upon those action steps, is really something that is worth reviewing. And I do have the notes from our last time that we went through these different items. Some of these were updated. Some of them, I think, I kind of kept the same. So I guess we can start right here in terms of, looking at this particular goal in terms of an outline identifying and prioritizing improvements to tech resource acquisition, community outreach, and the implementation of modern learning techniques to be included in the next strategic plan. So, as we, some of the, I think feedback was around, okay, if you're surveying staff and family, students, around some of these different things, what was completed. So we had talked about what was the work completed, what was the, what was it they were actually doing that you're surveying them about. And I think that's something that's very important, because again, we can just put a survey out there about how they feel about something, but what actionable steps kind of came out of this. So there was a kind of modification to that. We looked at assessing various modern learning models. And again, that modern learning model is kind of that term that we've kind of thrown out there, but really how you're integrating new kind of modern learning techniques. And I think one of the things when we talk about modern learning, I think ultimately it's taken on a very different role now in terms of what's happened with remote learning, in terms of our teachers utilizing a variety of teaching tools that might be electronic, that they are looking at things very differently. And I think that a lot can kind of fall under the umbrella of modern learning right now. So we also were looking at some different ways in which we can compare how we're using certain items to other places. And Panorama was the social emotional kind of collection of data that we have out there. And that's one area that we're collecting quite a bit of information right now, and it's a place we've been very consistent with over the past couple of years. I think as we add more data tracking tools associated with online learning, remote learning, I think we'll be able to better assess how kids are doing. If you're looking at just a pure metric, so that's something that we're looking at. Staff, parents, surveying them around what was successful in remote learning, and that's something that, again, as my wife and I were just talking about this, what has made remote learning successful for some students, what has made it a challenge for others, how can we take some of that information and use it to develop a stronger remote learning program, moving forward. And then defining the outline and sharing it with the committee in terms of what would it ultimately look like moving forward to help really make sure that the strategic plan has some of that information built right into it. So there was that.
So why don't we hit a pause there, and maybe if you can keep sharing, that would be good. And then see what input people have for goal 1.
I think, just to give my 2 cents, more of an observer on the committee, we talk about learning, right? But I think the action steps aren't even really touching the teaching, never mind the actual learning of the students. We talk about like surveys and different modalities, but how do we know that learning happened? And I was struck last month, in last month's Ed Leadership, it's all about grading, right? Grading and assessment,
Right.
how things need to look different now. And I'm wondering if there's opportunities within that goal to really think about how does the actual delivery of instruction need to change, and how does the assessment of the learning need to change in this kind of modern environment? Because I think, it's just my gut reaction from seeing some classes, and the teachers that I'm finding to be most successful are the ones that are embracing changing the way they do things, and the ones that are struggling are literally standing at their podium in their classroom with a camera on them, lecturing the same way they would lecture if there were 30 students in front of them. So I would encourage you to really hone in on those action steps, to include a lot of the really great research that's coming out right now, and really kind of pinpoint what you're looking for your principals and then obviously your teachers to be conveying to their students in the classroom.
That's helpful. Thank you.
And I won't say I echo it because it's not exactly. I'm sorry, Laura. Go ahead. You go first.
Well, I was just gonna. Why don't you go, actually, Ken? Because I think you're gonna piggyback off of what Megan said. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's piggybacking to a degree. I think what I'd like to see myself for some of these action items is I would like to see like an objective, right? So not just learning or whatever, something squishy. I guess I'd want to see something like, what are 3 like core objectives that we care about, or 2 core objectives, whatever, that that we like to measure with this. I mean, even if it's 3 core objectives, you can imagine one of them could be as simple as some sort of attendance measure, right? So are kids attending? Are they engaged? A second one could be a more SEL measure, and a third could be a direct learning measure, right? So, and I'm not saying what they should be because y'all are the experts on this, but I'd like to see some definition to what we're interested in learning about, and then worry about the modalities, how we're assessing that could be part of the goal. It doesn't have to be defined immediately, right? So if survey is part of that, if data are part of that, so for instance, if it's attendance, and I'm not saying that's the right thing, you can get attendance data, right? And you can analyze it by grade, by what have you, right? You could send a survey to ask about, how active was your participation? You can ask the teachers, how active do you think student participation was? Like, there's different modalities you can get at that, but I think for me, it has to start with what do I want to learn about? Like, what is my key objective? And then think about what the tools are, surveys, whatever, to measure those objectives. Otherwise, I feel like we're writing a survey that's going to wind up with a lot of, how did you feel kind of things, because we weren't laser focused about the things we care about most. And I think the leadership part of it there from the superintendent is defining, not by just writing down, okay, well, Mills thinks attendance, but like, what to you are the most, like the 2 or 3 most important things that we should learn about from this experience, right? And then worry about how we assess them. That's kind of where, I don't know if I was actually piggybacking on Megan, but it's similar, right? I think.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Laura, I'm sorry, did you want to?
So I'd like to take sort of I think a different approach here. And I was looking at these goals and thinking about what is your measure of success? Like, what am I going to be looking at to say, yes, Daryl was right on the money with this. Like, this was our goal and this was the outcome. From this goal, what I'm expecting the outcome to be is that we have a strategic planning committee that's been formed, and that committee has been handed an outline that focuses on the technology, resource acquisition, and so on and so forth. That's going to be, in my mind, based on this goal, the measure that, yes, Daryl is showing leadership, he's showing vision, he's showing communication, because he has put this strategic planning committee in place, and they have a direction based on the outline that they can now take forward. In order to get there, what do we need? What do you need to do? Well, you need to put the committee together. So you need to identify the key players and stakeholders that need to be on that strategic planning committee. And either before them or after them, you need to have some sort of data gathering. And that would require data gathering from various constituencies within the organization as well, and probably would include a survey. But what I'm really reluctant to do is say that an action step for you is that survey. You should be building the capacity to get that work done. I feel like this action step of putting a survey together, to me, it sounds like you're going to put the survey together, or you're going to find somebody to put the survey together, maybe. But I feel like what I want to see your resources, your time and energy put into is the organization, is the management, is the visioning, is the communication, and the use of human resources, getting to our indicators. Like, we need to be able to say, here's the indicator, and here's what you did to get the goal accomplished, but using these indicators. And the way the action steps are written right now doesn't help me see the connection, the direct correlation to the indicators. It might be a valid punch list, but I'd like to see something that's a little bit more overarching, that your action steps are providing the structure. So I don't know if I was clear in that, but it just feels like I constantly see a lot of surveys coming up on action steps, and that really eventually just like, I can't handle another survey. I know they're important, but like, that's not what I want you to be doing. I want you to be spending your time building the capacity within the district to actually execute those things. So I guess, I feel like, I'd like to see in the action steps a little more clarity on what you specifically are going to do, not so much of what the committees or what the small groups might do or create.
Okay.
If I'm allowed to tie a theme between what I heard from Laura and what I think I was trying to say, I think it's leadership steps is what I think we want to see, right? Like, for me, you mentioned the word vision, Laura, and then you also mentioned the human resources. And I think that while a lot of yours are talking about human resources, mine was kind of talking about the vision. And I think they're both important, right? In terms of setting objectives, marshaling how that's going to work. And I agree with Laura, like, the superintendent shouldn't be like writing a survey necessarily, but should be trying to figure out, why do we care about this survey? And then, helping others figure out how they're going to do the actual data collection. I know there's not a lot of others, but
and providing the schedule, right? Allowing people the time and the opportunity to discover those things.
Okay. Helpful.
So I had one question for this goal, and I think I had said to you about defining comparable districts, because depending on the committee member, they're going to find a different district that they would define as comparable.
Right.
But on another side of defining, I know last time I had said about how I liked that term modern learning quite a bit, but that is such a squishy term that I would reiterate. I think that's what Ken was getting at, right? Just to make sure I'm on the same page here, that of having those like 2 or 3 core ideas, objectives of what makes up modern learning and how you measure it. Am I following right? If that's what where we're going on this discussion?
Yeah, I think it ties back. I think the theme goes back. You have the modern learning concept that needs a certain amount of definition, but I think some of that comes back to the leadership associated with the superintendent's position, what I'm doing to promote that and define it overall, without taking the without me doing the actual writing of it, organizing it, putting it together. It's really here's my vision as the leader of this district in terms of what this needs to look like, and here are the action steps that need to occur. With the staff that I have. And again, one of the things that we always run into in this district, and it is one thing that as a superintendent, the next superintendent that comes in here is really going to have to understand that there are, because of the limitations associated with the number of people, the people that you have working for you have to be super top notch because it is so thin, and you do end up doing a lot of the work yourself. But I think having the ability to then leave it open, because I think, Laura, I hear what you're saying with that, and Ken and Megan as well. So going back to the modern learning piece, I think that comes back to how I define it and what we're looking at as a leadership group moving forward as well. So.
And I'm almost thinking too, and I know that's the struggle, and the struggle is real with the lack of people in Central. But I'm also thinking about opportunity, and it just got off a 2-hour meeting trying to reframe opportunity in a project. But you have an opportunity right now with your principals and even some of your assistant principals being remote, that they have more capacity since they're not dealing with the nitty-gritty of building operations to really kind of step up as some of those, tier B leaders. So you have your central office, but you have this core group of 20 something, maybe even 30 something when you put your assistant principals in, where you have the time now for them to collaborate and also delegate some of these responsibilities in the remote world, where in real time we wouldn't have that time moving forward. So I think, maybe giving them more capacity to do some of these tasks might be a way to first kind of build that leadership pipeline within the district, but also just allowing them to use their voice more effectively.
Yeah, that's a very good point as well. So I think tying it all together.
Could I recommend that we look at the fourth goal? Because I think, to me, the fourth one and the first one are a little blurbing together.
Yeah.
And
What number did you say?
the fourth one?
Fourth one, okay.
That's establish and implement a system that enhances the communication. Oh, am I on the right one? Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, not the fourth one. I'm mistaken. The one about making the strategic plan.
So that's 3. Yeah,
3. Okay, I'm sorry, number 3. Yeah.
And initiate a process to develop a new strategic plan to include feedback from stakeholders. So that does blur into 1.
Can you share your screen on that one, if you would?
Sure.
I mean, my question here is, part of 1 was like setting up the strategic plan. Part of 3 is bringing the strategic plan together. And I just want to make sure that the goals are distinct, even if they're cooperative, right?
Right. So this goal, establishing and initiating a process to develop a new strategic plan to include feedback from stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess as I've kind of rolled out those action steps, some of it is just organizing it. So these are the steps that need to be taken in order to kind of give a baseline for moving forward with this, which similar to what you talked about, Laura, in terms of kind of here are the steps that need to be taken in order to pull together, a strategic planning committee, those types of things. And this again goes more into, okay, procurement process, looking at a firm. It's really around, okay, we have to have this created and defined by the end of the school year, so that this process can really start to take place over the summer into the fall, because it'll probably be a 2 to 3, maybe 4-month process in terms of all the feedback and town hall type meetings and the information that is gathered by whatever firm is used to kind of go through the process as well.
Should we include some of the language from the first goal here that highlights some of the things that we want to see in the strategic plan? I mean,
So let me go back. Do you mean some of the comments that we talked about?
no, I don't quite have my words formed yet, but we want to be clear that I'm thinking, based on this goal, the first goal, we want the strategic goal to be connected to the prioritized improvements to technology, resource acquisition, community outreach, communication, right? As we implement the modern and the implementation of the modern learning techniques, right?
Right.
So strategic goal should have those elements in it, is what I'm saying. So I'm not sure if it's important to enumerate those in goal 3 or not, but by putting them in goal 3, I'm thinking that then it ensures that we are laser focused on improvements to technology, resource acquisition, community outreach, communication, and the modern learning techniques. So do you understand what I mean?
Yes.
So we want people from the student learning perspective, the student learning goals perspective. We want people within the teaching community, within the resource, the background, departmental community, technology, and so forth, to focus on those things. But also we want this strategic plan to include those things.
So where would that fit in with this one here?
I'm asking the question. So if you are establishing and initiating a process to develop a new strategic plan, do you want to enumerate what you would like that new strategic plan to include?
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
with a focus. So I'm saying the superintendent will establish and initiate a process to develop a new strategic plan that addresses the improvements needed in technology, resource acquisition, community outreach, communication, and the implementation of modern learning techniques.
Laura, I like that a lot.
By having it in 2 places, we're just ensuring that it's really, we're
Okay,
driving.
so I'm just cutting it back. I'm going back to this.
So
Where am I cutting?
So you're not cutting there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where am I copying?
So you're going to say improvements. So copy improvements to technology, resource acquisition, community outreach, communication, and the implementation of modern learning techniques. That section. Copy that. And put that down in number 3.
Yep.
To develop a new strategic plan that includes, and then paste it. Paste there. And then I would just put a period at the end of that. I mean, we're gonna. It's.
You can't have a strategic
You can't make a plan without stakeholder feedback. You know, so that's like it would be glaring if it did not include that, right? So I would say just put a period there and then eliminate that last section. That's what I would suggest.
Like this.
I would agree. And then it's not missing, right? But like if I start to tease around in my head, like what's the vision, right? So I think you've identified the areas of improvement, right? And these are places that need, improvement, and it should be the foci of the strategic plan. My question is why, right? So like the second part of the sentence that will get too wordy if you include it, but needs to be right here is in order to blank, right? So we don't want to just improve these things in some weird vacuum because people say we don't communicate effectively. What's going to happen to the kids if we improve these things? What's going to happen to our district if we improve these things? When you're looking at the district as a whole, what benefit will come out of improving these items? And I believe when you tie those two together, you'll then get your vision.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like the action items aren't strategy, right? So you have to start off with like what is the objective? Like we want to improve students' ability to X, Y, Z, and
I
A,
don't
right?
want to go back to 2005 and say improve their reading scores on MCAS by 10 points. But like those used to be like those type of objectives, though, right? Like what when you look at our district, you look at our graduates, what are they missing? Are they missing critical thinking skills? Are they missing the ability to communicate effectively with one another? And how do we know that? So whether you're looking at, and I think we have great numbers of kids going to college. I haven't researched, and I know you can get it off of DESI. Do they stay there? Do they persevere once they attend these universities, or do they drop out? So finding those type of data points, which you can do really quickly. What are we looking to improve, and why?
And I would encourage us to use data to inform the high level goals, but I wouldn't make the high level goals personally too specific, like a gain on MCAS or improvement in college. I think at the end of the day, the high level goal has to be my priorities are to make students successful in college, to make them, make students who can read to learn, whatever those things are, and then under that are the more specific things, right? So I think we identify our weaknesses, and then have a high level goal, like who do we want this student to be holistically, right? And then probably including an SEL sort of thing, and then move back down to see how we're going to implement and measure those things. Because you can't have the highfalutin goal without the action item, but you can't have the action item for no reason.
Right.
Right. There has to be like an objective of what that will make our students become.
Right.
Or
Okay.
whomever. It might just not all be students. Part of it might be staff too, right?
It definitely could be. And I think that's one of the things we have to look at when we have, because again, it's district improvement. So we're looking at, we could look at it holistically, coming from the vantage point of a student all the way to, a staff member. So
in terms of the action items, one thing that I had mentioned that I guess I'd like to see, and this is more technical, is review progress isn't really a deliverable. I guess it would be like, report on progress of the current, and maybe 12/20 is optimistic for that. But I think that the output would be like, here's our goals, here's what we've met, here's how we know we met those things. That's like a measurable that I can have in my hands and evaluate. Reviewing is part of that, but it's not and it's an action, but it's not really an output.
Right.
And sort of the first step for a strategic plan is to say, well, what did you accomplish in the last one?
Right. Exactly. So it's taking that, it's assessing where we are in reference to the overall goals and objectives that we had set in the last strategic plan.
What a consultant might call a current state analysis of the strategic plan.
I like it.
But we'd want to see it, right? Like, and you want to think about when that's actually deliverable. Like,
Yeah,
it seems like 12/20, that's probably not deliverable. You might need.
No, that's not deliverable.
A little bit more than that, but so review could be the first step. But I think review is unaccessible by the committee.
Okay.
And then, as I say, with the procurement document for the hiring consulting firm, I think part of that procurement document kind of trips me up a little bit. I think that just seems like paperwork. Yep. But for me, I think the question is like, I'd want to establish what's the objective for hiring this firm. Like, what do I want a firm to do, right? And then procuring it is just a matter of Dan, like,
Right.
doing a bidding. But when you think about in the world where you don't just have 10 days to hire a consultant, the question is, well, what do I want the consultant to do, right? What would I send to a consultant and say, hey, this is what I need from you, right? This is what we're looking to do. And it can't just be write a strategic plan, because I think I guess they'll take your business, but I think it could be a little richer than that.
Okay. Yeah, I like that, because again, that can become the step that we use to bring on board. And I think that's really what I was thinking in terms of what a procurement document does. But again, there has to be some objective around what we're looking for in terms of that firm that's going to help us. Where are we trying to be?
So in terms of that first action item, I think you said this, Ken, but I just want to make sure that I heard this correctly, that I interpret it correctly. I think that the review progress on the current strategic plan, I think, would be something that the committee would do. That's not something that I would see you specifically as doing. And it seems to me that across the other column there, it says school administrators and superintendent, district level administration. To me, by you creating the capacity and the timeline and the structure and the team, that is what a leader is doing, right? They say, okay, the leader is gonna set the timeline, set the team together, and put them in the proverbial room to review what we have as a strategic plan, review what's been done, and if they can't answer a question, identify who's going to answer their question on what's been done with the current strategic plan, and then what was working or what still needs to be done. That's what the team is doing. That's not what you are doing. You as the head of our organization is saying, I need these people in the room. I need these people to work with this consulting firm that you have vetted, right? And this is when I need it. This is the deliverable. I need to be able to deliver this to the school committee for their final approval on such and such a date. And so I would prefer, and I think I heard Ken saying this, like that action step is not really for you, but somebody else. So what are you going to do so that I know that you've done it? Reviewing the current progress is not really something that you are doing. You are building the team and building the capacity to get that job done.
I hear what you're saying. Okay.
Because one of the things that I heard in some of our last conversations is, we need to be able to see evidence to the indicators that you are meeting your standards, you are meeting your indicators on how you manage situations, how you utilize your human resources, how you utilize the scheduling and the manpower in the district, and set the vision, set the goals, and then allow the staff to fulfill their obligations. I mean, you give the ultimate sign of approval on the strategic course.
Right. Yep.
You're not writing it specifically. You might be providing input and you're steering the ship, but you're not building it.
Exactly. Yep. That makes sense.
And at the same time, we are still measuring the output as a function of your leadership, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
Yes. So we'd want to see the report, and at least from what I'm hearing from Laura, but we'd also want to know how you influence the creation of the report. Not that you spent, midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning to write it, but you would be involved with it in an ex officio kind of way, right? At least in my mind, like, and to some degree to get, I think, to Laura's point maybe as well, is that you're building leadership capacity within your team when you have expectations for them, be it principals or whomever, so that the next time you have to write a remote learning plan, there's more leadership capacity in your district to
Help out.
help out.
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, this is helpful for this one as well. Do you want to go back to 2? Wow, that's small print. And this is go ahead. I'm sorry.
Magnify it. Go from 100 to 125.
Yeah.
The top there.
It'll happen. It's slow.
Okay.
It's all the tabs.
Rob hell.
Bob Berlow and I. So what people will, there you go. But what'll happen is we'll be on they'll say, okay, we're sharing this. And they'll be like, hey, Daryl, Bob, you guys are already on this. And it's because we have 50 tabs open up above.
Mhm.
Is that a little better? I can do one more. It's just so slow. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just since that first one, are we on number 1 or number 2?
This is 2.
This is number 2. Okay.
I guess for me, I don't mind squishiness in the goal if the action items are a little bit more outcomey, right? So at least for me, there's meetings and there's studies, but I guess it's not, the outcome isn't measurable unless there's an objective that we want to measure, right? So to me, the objective isn't meeting with the principals. I mean, I guess that's an action, but my action would be to, whatever it is, build capacity to principals. I'm sure some of you who are in this field can come up with better words than I can, right? But for me, the action is whatever the objective it is that of why you're making these people read this book, right? Because then you can measure whether the book met that outcome, right? By a survey, by an essay, by bias training, whatever it is that you're using to measure. But I can, if we just list the books and say we're going to read them without knowing why we want to do that, then we can't assess if reading the book was worth it or not.
I like that.
I don't know what others think of that, or if they can phrase it better.
Well, what I was wondering is, after the principals read these books, you do these book studies and case studies. Are they meant to inform how, say, the school improvement plan would be updated for the year, or is it supposed to direct that kind of action afterwards? And if that is the case, then wouldn't that be part of the outcomes, the part of the product that comes out of it? Are those building level plans for addressing the cultural kind of shifts that was the phrase? That's not quite the right phrase, but
no,
what's at my fingertips.
Yeah, that's it. I hear what you're saying with that. So what's the reasoning behind reading these books in the first place, in terms of kind of what type of action steps can be taken? Is it a school improvement plan? Is it is it a group of teachers who are going to then read the book together afterward? Again, one of the originally when I started this last year, it was really around just I had done some reading over the summer, and I had really wanted to start to work with our administration around looking at unconscious bias just across the board. So as everything transpired this spring, it kind of brought all of these other items to the table, which is why, as you kind of go farther down, I kept these in here because I thought they were still important, the books and the discussions and so forth. But then this is, when you get down into this area where it's research and secure external strategic partnership, this is one of the items I think is going to be very important for this district in particular, to look at a 5 to 7 year plan around how this works. Because again, as I have, kind of started to work through this process a little bit and talked with, spoken with the firm that does this, they, again, they caution kind of putting too much out there too soon, because if you start to taint it from the beginning, it's going to make it really hard to make this sustainable over time. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. So part of it is coming back, having a kind of a baseline for some of the conversations that we've already started with principals, because we started this last spring and then the pandemic hit. So coming back to it, looking at some of the case studies, but then coming, back through, because you have this survey around understanding bias and kind of principals, kind of perceptions of it. But then looking at having them part of, what the multi-year plans look like. So that's something, and again, Laura, you've been talking about the strategic plan. That's an item that becomes almost its own silo, because, within our strategic plan, we talk about our 5 silos. This might be an area that becomes one of our silos that we focus on.
So one of the things that I hear you saying is that this external partnership is going to play a pivotal role in helping our community move through this process, right?
Yes.
So by you working with your administration team, setting that as a priority, finding the organization and setting the partnership, securing the partnership, you are showing, to me, that's when you create that partnership, and that partnership then does something with the rest of the school community. That's your leadership, that's your setting priorities, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
What's going to happen after that happens? So again, I'm trying to flip back to what the goal is. So you're going to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion district-wide. So simply creating that partnership is step one, because they're going to help us and make sure we don't take any missteps along the way.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that we've already got a survey, not really a survey, but a sort of a complaint form that students can access and parents can access to report instances of racism and circumstances and so forth. So those are some things that are happening because you are setting that vision, you are setting that guidance and that leadership, and you are building the capacity for people to move forward to do that. And so, I want to make sure that that you are, as Ken said, not staying up all hours of the night so that you can make these things happen, but that you are building capacity within our organization for the leadership to emerge from all aspects, all the way down into the teaching and the students. And that's how those are tangibles. To me, those are tangibles. When we see a marked improvement in student and teacher relationships, mm-hmm. and interventions happening, and we see the instances of reporting going down, and we've got this litany of anecdotal evidence that things are not good, and we've got testimonials. So how we respond to that is not by, how we respond to that is by you creating the structure for people to move forward and to do good work. And I know I kind of got lame at the end there, but I think the action steps need to speak to how you are providing that structure, how you are building that capacity.
And to piggyback on what Laura said, I think you already have in a number of ways, from your message that you sent out this summer to moving forward with the new school committee, subcommittee on diversity, to the task force that's already happening at the high school, with people kind of reaching out and students really stepping up and having their voice heard. So I think what you're seeing, Daryl, is when you use your voice for bold leadership, bold things happen, right?
Mhm.
And also bold pushback happens, which we've seen in a lot of ways. And I think in the back of your mind, you're going to need to be strong, because those who want to challenge the importance of this issue are going to continue to do so. And they will do so loudly, and they will be at times even frightening, right? And I think we've seen that a few times already.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, you've seen it, Megan. Yeah.
In the back of your head, you need to say, like, wow, I did something just by using my voice once, by presenting a vision of what I want this district to be. All these pieces started forming. So when you're doing this goal, continue that type of collaboration with the school committee, with the students, with the buildings, and then real change starts to happen.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. And I think when we, again, what from our conversations with Deep, the group that we're consulting with right now, it's really around, and again they talk about this. It has to be leadership led. Change has to happen from the top in terms of how this works, because again you want to ensure that there is the capacity to do this at all levels, but you've got to start at the top. So you can see that at the national level. It's great to have the grassroots up, but if you don't have support from some of the people who have some authority to do some things, it's really tough. So I hear exactly what you're saying with that. Anything else for this one?
Well, so why don't we turn to 4? Just
Am I okay? Which one am I on?
so
Nope. I'm sorry. This one. That one. Okay. So it's establishing and implementing a system that enhances the communication between home and school for families that will include gathering and analyzing student retention trends.
So this one, the last part of it is kind of a question for me. I think this is two things in one, and they're not quite. It's not quite fitting. It's not setting right in my brain. That we've heard 1,000 times, if we've heard it once, that communication is a challenge right now. That the communication needs to be improved. And I believe wholeheartedly that there are things that can be done to improve our communication, top down, all the way around. And also, I hear that we are dealing with retention trends trending down. That we're losing kids, and I think that both of those are important, and we put them into this one goal, and it just doesn't, the way it's worded doesn't sit quite right, because I don't see the direct connection. So I guess I'd like to know how we're gonna make sure that we give both pieces of this goal, which I consider to be two different goals, really just kind of sandwiched to one, how we're gonna dovetail those to be effective for both of those things. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I really very much agree, because I even think that it's not just that they're not connected, but I think for me they're a little misleading, because even when I kind of heard Daryl say when he was reading the goal, and I'm sorry if I misheard it, and I'm just hearing
Sure.
what I think I'm hearing,
Sure.
is that we were perhaps attributing the retention to communication. And I think in many cases that's not the case. I think that, just because they're not telling us why they're leaving and we're not telling them what's so great about us, I think what we might discover in a real retention asset assessment is that it's not communication. It's we're not offering what they need, and maybe we just can't, but at least we would know why they left. And I doubt it's just communication. And I think lumping them together, and this is maybe just repeating what Laura said, and I'm sorry if it is, but I think it obfuscates a little bit the retention question.
It does.
And just detracts from do we want to build a meaningful communication plan? So I guess they're both important though, right? So
They
I think
are.
I've just restated what Laura said in probably more rambly words.
I think you're both correct. I'm just going back to the original concept of this goal. I believe was more around retention than it was communication. And again, I think part of it came back down to, why are we losing? There's concern around why we're losing students. What does that do to how can we communicate with families about it? So I think this goal has it's really now 2 goals in terms of how this is written. But I think the original intent was around the number of students who are leaving the district right now, and what are we looking at around that, kind of those trends.
So I could actually see that question of, why are we losing kids to be connected to all of these goals? And that one of the action steps that you could embed in every single one of these goals is connecting with parents who have left the district and finding out what it was that was the problem, why they left. And that survey, that questionnaire, that reach out and call someone old school style, could be an action step that goes for every single one of these goals. And in that one thing, you could probably get a lot of information that would inform our strategic plan, that would inform our communication plan, that would inform our inclusion and equity plan. I mean, it could be one thing that could hit every single one of these goals, just that one action step.
Can I, sorry, I don't know if you're set, Laura.
Yeah,
good. So I want to pose the question of if it's too fraught for misinterpretation this year to be talking about retention. A lot of families, I think, are responding to something completely different this year than the other trends that we had been seeing leading up to COVID, because anecdotally, the families that I know of that have left this year are all about their house, how their house is structured, and how that fits with remote or hybrid. And I think that that's a very different question than what next year will be. And honestly, from my seat here, it feels like the kind of thing to look at next year once we have an idea of who's coming back.
Yeah.
And I think that Laura's point of adding that as action steps with all of the other goals makes a lot of sense for informing all of those other goals. But I wonder what you would consider for focusing on the communication plan aspect of this goal and leaving retention for a future part. I'm just so concerned about smushing data that doesn't belong together.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're looking for two different items here, and again, I'd rather focus on the communication. Again, this was a response to kind of the questions around why are we losing so many kids? What's going to happen to our budget? What are the trends? But I agree wholeheartedly with you. We don't lose 400, 500 students a year because our school district, people want to leave. People want a school choice out. They want them to go to private school. So this is an anomaly. But as you said, I think this would be a great goal next year as we've kind of gone through this process. And if things, are back to normal somewhat next September, then perhaps, this becomes something that's utilized around those student retention trends. But we could, kind of bolster the other aspects of the communication between home and school, the two-way communication. I think that was something that was, we've had a lot of discussions around just in general. Sorry about that. And again, I think much of, I'll have to rewrite the action plan. Well, yeah, because most of this doesn't necessarily tie back to that part of it, but.
So let me just play devil's advocate for a second. I don't disagree with what Linda said at all. I think that asking questions about our fundamentals as a district is better done in a normal year. And I think a communication plan, just as an aside, the commissioner sent out your whole thing for you this week, right? Like all you have to do is use that document. It sets up how do you do a review of a communication plan, how you develop it. It's a wonderful document for the little less time I spent with it. So I would use it, right?
Yep.
But the devil's advocate is that, yes, people left this year because of their individual home circumstances, because they wanted their kids to be in school, because they wanted their kids to be out of school. The reason I think it might be super important to do it this year is they may never, ever come back unless we reach out to them and figure out, okay, you went to St. John's this year. The question for me would be for the St. John's kids, and there's a lot of them, right? Mm-hmm. What was, aside from COVID, what was the main reason that you left for St. John's, and what was the main thing that could bring you back? I don't know, but I just think we need to somehow, it doesn't have to even be one of your 4 goals. I just worry if it's not, we're not going to get around to doing it. But if we don't reach out to each of those people individually somehow this year, not you again, you shouldn't be doing it, but somebody, right, on your staff,
Yep.
To figure out why they left, you're not going to get them back. Because once you go to St. John's, once you go to, Bancroft, once you go to an online charter school, it's just comfortable, right? It's your new normal. And it's change to go back to your public school, right? So I just worry that it's not just going to be like, oh, COVID's over, which it won't be in the fall. And let's go back to public school again. I just think that we've got to be much more proactive about reaching out to those people and making them feel like, we're sorry you left, we want you back.
Yeah.
Even just saying that and giving them space.
What you're talking about is communication, right? Like, and that falls right under this goal. So it's communication, and it's almost, Daryl, in a sense, it's marketing, right? Like, and I think,
oh yeah,
right? It's like almost like this drip marketing campaign that we talked about in facilities of getting people excited to come back to hybrid, right? Like, I'm gonna give you a little picture of the bathrooms, get you excited. Next day, I'm gonna give you a picture of the cafeteria. Like, that type of campaigning, and I think we've said this, Ken's gonna roll his eyes when I say this, but like a real social media presence by the district, right? And not by those who are in certain forums and say certain things, but you saw the success that the students had this year, right? So like, if you just take Catherine and Kamichi's model and be like, that's what we're gonna do. Like they started an Instagram, which became a web page, which became a Facebook page, and they have tons of followers, and people like are just eating up the information. Like, it's almost as simple as that. And maybe you have high school interns that help you run it, but like, that's this kind of communication where, like, if I'm the kid at St. John's and I get this drip marketing campaign of all the cool things that Wachusett's doing, maybe I want to come back and save 20 grand, right? Like, that's the type of, you go back to modern learning, you also have to think about modern communication.
Oh, exactly.
But it can't just be branding either. We have to be listening,
It's both.
and
It's a two-way.
it's both, and learning. So if you hear from like 15 kids, you know, well, I might go to that high school if I could take 1 or 2 more classes in, you know, shop or whatever the right word for it is, then at least we have the conversation of saying, well, maybe it is at the end of the day worth it pursuing this vote tech person, right? Maybe that's an action item we take, because we heard from 15 kids that part of the reason they left, you know, is because of this. They would have stayed if they could have just had something extra. We have to listen and not just talk, right? In whatever this is.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is that from you, Daryl, and from members on the committee too, is that people in the committee, and I haven't really heard Linda, so I don't want to speak for you, are potentially more interested in it being more robustly focused on communication.
Mm-hmm.
That's been clearly an issue that I think, and not to put words in Laura's mouth, but from previous goals, you know, it ties to the indicators too,
right?
Which we'll talk about soon. I think somewhere in this thing we have to be able to hold you to the fact that you figure out where the kids go, right? And this year is just super important. They may be like, hey, it's just COVID, we'll be back. And then, okay, good, check. We'll see you next year. But for the ones who it's not, somehow, whether it's communication or something, it has to be able to point, at least for me. And if I'm the only one, that's fine. We don't have to do it, but I just worry you're going to miss them forever.
So Ken, when you're talking about survey, town hall meetings, listening forums, families concerning reasons for students being unenrolled in WRSD, I guess those were just examples of different ways in which, you know, I and or people who work in our office would be reaching out to those families.
I think that could be a bullet point, but what I'm hearing from others and from you is that the main goal is a new communication strategy. And then maybe that's one goal in it, right, is to reach out to those who have left and see what they're missing. But that recasting it, right, as the goal really being having a communications strategy. And again, I think, I didn't look at it super deep, but like something like what the commissioner sent out, it was a question answer, you know, how are we going to develop a communication strand? How do we actualize that? And then coming to us and telling us what resources you need, you know?
Yep. So changing this goal to remove.
Yep.
Okay.
But I think that some note of including families that are within the district enrolled or unenrolled in the district, like that I think needs to be highlighted.
Linda, can that become a bullet? Like down, I'm sorry. Shoot. That become a bullet in terms of the action plan?
I think so, because you also want to, I think that it might be instructive to know not just why people left, but why did the people stay? The people who didn't leave, right? We're the majority, right? We stayed and we're seeing it through. Is it because it's public school? Is it because of what is offered at the individual buildings? Is it because of something else? But that's, I think, an important piece of understanding that kind of marketing aspect of, are we providing what you need, and let me tell you that we are. You know what I mean? Like that.
Right.
So in the goal, could we see a slight rewording to where it ends up with families, right? Could it be for all families, even if just it's for all families with school age, I don't know, all families with school age children. I don't know if we just want to, are we limiting it to communication to families in this goal, or as opposed to, you know,
something like that? So one of the things we talked about is because we have quite a few families who have chosen to homeschool their students this year, and it's because, you know, again, it's their reason is, as Linda said, it's their house. It's what's happening in their lives now that doesn't typically happen. So we're now sending our communication out to those students who are homeschooled. who ask for it. And that's something we've never done. Typically homeschool is, they're on their own. We approve what they're doing. They have a review, at least once a year. But now we're communicating with them if they wish to have the communication in the same way that we are with all of our families.
I definitely get that. And I think, we talk about the St. John's, but anecdotally, the families I know homeschooled for those reasons of either not wanting to come to school at all or not, schedules weren't working. And a lot of them are going crazy and can't wait to come back. So,
right.
The COVID definitely has its touch on that. But I am interested in, especially those who did choose private, because you do have a school community there where with homeschool, you have the same type of isolation of sorts that our students are experiencing who stayed in the district. I do worry more about those who chose private, though, getting into a new community and perhaps falling in love with it or not. But I think knowing why is really important because, again, we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what the next situation may be. But if we do want to prevent any sort of exodus in the future, if something else does come down the pipeline, we should know how to get them to stay.
I agree.
So let's talk process because it's almost November, right? And we need to do a mid-year evaluation, and we can't do a mid-year evaluation of goals when there's not goals, right? So with sensitivity to the fact that it's a busy time, I think that this has to be a priority, right? I know it's a priority amongst many. So Megan, when is our next school committee meeting? It's the 9th, right?
It's the 9th, and we were hoping at that point to really kind of start to go into a cadence of once a month, though I am thinking that's not realistic. But it will be realistic in November because of the Thanksgiving holiday.
Because I throw out there two conflicting observations about the 9th. One, I like the idea of meeting the hour before the meeting on the 9th, because if the superintendent was to give us a revision before then, we could give them feedback, and maybe if it was ready, it could go on the agenda, which could always get passed over, right?
Right, that's true.
If it's not ready. The flip side of that is I am unavailable on that night because I am virtually away. Like I have a NEASC site visit that I'm doing. It's actually NETCHI because it's higher ed.
The only thing worse than a real NEASC visit is a virtual NEASC visit.
Yeah. There's no dinners. There's I feel guilty not sneaking an office hour in the middle of my break, right? But anyway, so I am quote unquote away, right, for NETCHI, which is our high ed NEASC that day. So it doesn't mean y'all can't do this without me, because obviously you can. But everybody else would have to be there because we wouldn't have a quorum if the other three of you weren't there. So I'm hesitant to call a meeting on the day I know I can't be there, but I think it's actually not a bad idea. Timing-wise.
What about that Friday before, Ken?
We have a school committee on a Friday night. Is that what we're saying?
Woohoo!
Or Friday afternoon? Like I mean, I don't know how flexible you guys are with scheduling, but
I have to look at my calendar.
With Zoom life, we could not have to do it at night.
I would feel better doing it the week before, as you're saying, Megan, because if for some reason we can't get enough people on Monday,
I know.
I
don't want to wait. Like if I'm looking at the 9th and 2 weeks from there is the 23rd, right before Thanksgiving, and I really don't want to call.
Yeah, here you go. I mean,
the week before is next week. I just want to keep people on.
I know.
I mean, my work schedule is flexible enough where I can even do something during the day. I can do something in the afternoon. So whatever works for you guys.
I mean, I could do the 5th. Yeah. I don't know, Daryl, be able to
be done by then.
You done with the action steps by now?
I mean, I have nothing available basically during the day next week, partly because I'm gone on the following Monday and Tuesday.
Right.
It's advising for us week 2.
Yeah.
On top
Well-
of all my classes. I'm not really available till 5:30 on the Friday.
Would you want, how about this? I guess, how about I pull this together,
Okay.
share it with all of you. What's today? Wednesday? Today Wednesday?
Yeah.
Today's Wednesday. Okay. So share this with you by this weekend, like on this weekend.
Mhm.
So you have the opportunity to kind of go through it, review it. It's not like things are slowing down for me, but I can carve out some time to kind of clean these up and get these back out to you with some action steps. And if you pull them back to me and I, take some feedback, hopefully there's not a ton of there's feedback, but if I can put it back out to you and you feel like you're in a good place with it, then maybe that Monday we can still just have a quick meeting beforehand. If you're not there, Ken, and it's a kind of we're good to go with this.
I mean, I guess it's either that or meet late next week, right? Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah.
I just can't do it during the day because I have.
What if we started with that, and then if we need to call a meeting on Monday for, say, Thursday, we do so?
Yeah. That works.
I mean, your stress level looks like it's at an 11. But
No, it's fine. No, I think
everything
Wednesday or
last
Thursday.
week, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm smooth sailing now.
Yeah, Wednesday or Thursday would be fine. It would have if. What does your calendar look like,
Wednesday, right?
Daryl?
We have facilities on Wednesday.
And we have business and finance on Monday.
Yeah, we do. I mean, the only thing, if it wasn't going to be a long meeting, we could do a Wednesday,
Right before facilities or something.
like a 5:30 to 6:30 or something like that.
I would assume it'd be short because we're just going through the last bit of revision.
Right.
I have a meeting until about 6:15 on Wednesday that I can't miss.
It's going to be Thursday, I think.
Oh, Thursday, you said? I thought you said Wednesday.
Oh, well, I did say Wednesday. Thursday, the only thing that, gosh, we might have negotiations.
No, we're not. Nope. We're going to be all done.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. That's why I left that open.
Yeah, I told you it's all good vibes.
Okay,
All
good.
good vibes.
Good.
Because that's where we've been.
That's awesome.
Right? It's all good vibes. All good vibes. Everything's going to be great.
This
So-
is the point where I chime in and just laugh.
I was here last week and I had to take some time to get to here, and now I'm ready for anything.
So when is facilities on Wednesday?
Facility
6:30.
6:30.
You said 6:30?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We meet early.
And that's probably going to be lengthy, I suspect.
We usually go about an hour. Adam's pretty quick.
You know what? We could probably come back to Adam and ask if we could, because Linda's already there. So
Yeah.
We could
Yeah,
we could
This is
probably
our
just
lunch.
carry over and start at 7:30. I think we could
Yeah.
we could reach out to Adam and add something. It might be a little easier, but if my whole point is to get you the information by this weekend, so you have the opportunity to review it and
See,
kind of give me some
you can
feedback.
get it to us this weekend, and it's going to be fantastic, and we're not going to have to meet. See?
Yeah,
All good.
yeah.
Why don't we see if Rebecca can put a meeting, Daryl, can you, on the agenda for, you said 7:30 on Wednesday, and we'll hope we don't need to use it, but at least that way it's
Sure.
posted.
Yep.
Because the meeting has to be posted, 48 hours in advance, and
Did you say 7:30?
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, because you said your other meeting is 6:30. That pens them in pretty well. I don't mind having later meetings. I don't want to have a meeting that I am sitting for at 7:30 but doesn't start
No.
until 8. I'd rather it start at 8 than.
No,
than-
Adam's very efficient.
We'll wrap it up.
All right.
plus there's only 3 of us, so
Makes it easy.
Well, there's only
Yeah.
3 of us tonight, and it's already 8 o'clock. So. All right, so can we move on to the next part of our agenda? The next part of our agenda was, let me pull up the agenda, was the discussion of the indicators. So there are 4 standards, and I think 21 indicators, right, is the number that pops into my head. Let's see if I can get to the, we use Zoom for everything at work, so I want to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. I clicked on share, and this should be a window that has like potential indicators in it.
Yep.
So we're all seeing that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Another silly Google thing is that it doesn't show what you're showing.
I know.
So Linda and I both separately did our indicators. So I did 1 and 2, Linda did 3 and 4. And I think we took the same strategy of going through all the indicators, cutting them, pasting them into the document so that we can see what they are, and then indicating which ones we thought we should use. So at least in my model, what's on the screen for 1, there are 6, if I count right, 6 potential indicators to use. The first 3 are the ones we used last year with the scores. So those numbers are, I forget what the right word is, exceeding, proficient, needs improvement, right? And then I cut and pasted what the proficient language was so we could see what it's, so instead of just having the whole thing, we're just focusing on you know, what our objective is for the superintendent. And then I had suggested the ones that I bolded, but of course that's what we're here to discuss, right? So so yeah, there's 6. We don't want to do too many because then we don't give good feedback, right? So the ones we did last year was instruction, assessment, and data-informed decision-making. I suggested that we do instruction because since we're moving to these 2 new models, the idea of ensuring that instructional practices in all settings reflect high expectations regarding content and quality of effort and work seemed kind of timely to assess how that looked in the remote and hybrid environment. We did assessment and data-informed decision-making last year. Curriculum, I had suggested, because it's something, again, standards-based, well-structured lessons, measurable outcomes. It was one we didn't pick last year. It was basically my one. It seems similar to to assessment, to be honest, because it's also assessing. And then the ones we didn't do last year was demonstrates expected impact on student learning based on measures of student growth, basically because I wasn't so sure we had MCAS data to do some of those things. And then evaluation of staff. I thought that was kind of a little tricky this year because of, you know, the remote environment. I don't know. So those were my suggestions, but I just opened the floor to debate other suggestions. But not all of them. We do have to choose. Or we should choose.
I like the suggestions of using the 2 that you've bolded there on that page, the instruction and the curriculum piece. I think that both of them are spot on with this new way of interacting with student learning and engagement. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I think that those 2 are pretty important.
Linda, what do you think?
Yeah, so that was what I was thinking too, that those 2 seem to be the most important to call out. And I thought also, especially in this year, it'd be very important to keep to no more than 2 per section and not do a lot like in last year. There were a lot last year.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that these 2 are timely.
Daryl, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. You know, again, I think the timeliness associated with these, it kind of aligns with what we're, you know, looking at. And, you know, again, I don't want to it's not that I don't want to burden. Maybe burden isn't the right word, but I think if we tap into too many of these, it's good. People have a hard time kind of tying it back to some of the goals. So.
And Laura, I'm sorry if I remember this incorrectly, but you are the vice chair of the committee, right?
She is.
She is, yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that it's great that you're taking the minutes. It's a good combination, right? Because as I said, I'm not going to be there at our next meeting, so this is probably something we'll want to report. I don't want to surprise you by not being there, and then you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I had to talk about this," right at the main meeting. Somehow that's been done to me with business and finance a few times. This number 2 is management and operations. Again, they're all important. You know, law and ethics, I think he actually got pretty good scores on last year, except for one person. You know, fiscal systems, MIS are important things, but I was trying to narrow them down a little bit. So I was thinking that we needed 2A because to me that struck me as the most important in this environment, right? So plans, procedures, routines, operational systems to address a full range of safety, health, and emotional and social needs. You know, dismissals, meal times, transitions, it's all kind of related to the reopening plans. And since the reopening plans wasn't one of our goals, which is kind of a little bit ironic, it seemed like an important one. My instinct, of course, is just to highlight them all, but B, maybe it's next year, but I think when we talk about diversity, the one place where I think we don't talk enough is diversity of staff. And it's a hard button to push, but I think until there's a critical mass of staff who represent a more diverse picture of our community, it makes it difficult for to retain those staff members, because if you are representing whatever your affinity group is, that's tiresome unless there's a community. And then for students who may also be looking for mentors, they're not there, or those mentors are so overburdened by that task. So I think that's important. I don't know if it's this year. And then fiscal systems, of course, is always a thing, right? So I personally thought A was essential, and I thought B or E were of concern to the committee. I don't want to pick too many, so that's kind of, I'll stop talking and let's hear what everybody else thinks.
If I threw my 2 cents in there, I can tell you, A, I agree wholeheartedly. B, that is something that, that's part of that long-term plan that, I've already talked about with DEEP. Probably wouldn't play out very much this year in terms of kind of being able to come back to that, I guess. That might be a little tough. E is always one that's, especially this year, I feel like E's one that is, that's every year for us. It doesn't matter. But I do like B. I'm not sure how it's going to be measured.
That was my gut too for B, is that it's too soon. Just from sitting on diversity subcommittee and talking about how long that work is, it seems early.
Yeah, and just not to be the squeaky wheel as well. I don't know how much hiring we're going to be doing anyway with the current budget situation.
Right.
Period. Just hiring.
Yep. No, that's a good point. Considering we don't have a budget for this year, and
right.
I'm supposed to have my meeting with the towns in November.
I know.
To talk about next year's budget. I usually schedule it for next week.
Yeah.
Laura, what do you think?
C is jumping out at me as something that is what I would consider to be a priority indicator. And I think that the utilization of resources, especially during the crisis, to me, this is a real opportunity for growth. I think that the plans that have been laid out, I think the hybrid plan right now is as adequate as it could be. I think that what I'm finding is that there's a lot of negative feedback, including my own feedback on the Cohort C remote learning plan or lack thereof, at least as I understand it. To me, the scheduling and management of that is a real is really lacking, and I feel that's one indicator that that is just jumping out to me as an area that needs some serious work. I think that right now we are looking at major disruptions to education as we transition. I see students in Cohort C getting a missed opportunity for a robust learning plan, and I think that to me, if we can't find a way to improve C, that's not going to be a good thing for our kids.
Yeah, in rereading this C as you're talking, I agree. I think the thing that threw me was the management information systems. I wouldn't want us to focus too much on, I think we'd want to focus on the things you were saying and not get caught on the information systems phrase. But yeah, I agree. I still don't know what my remote kids' schedule is going to look like in the slightest, even after the schools release their plans.
And I think that it feels like it's going to be 1 hour a day, and I think that's a real disservice and a mismanagement of resources when we started out with a pretty robust remote plan at the beginning of this year, one that I was feeling very proud of, and now I'm feeling like it's going to fall flat, and it's really upsetting to me.
So Megan, what do you think of these?
No, I would agree with what everyone said. I don't really have much to add other than agreement.
So I'm hearing Laura speaking pretty strongly for C. I don't disagree.
I just don't think B is. I don't think we have the year for B right now.
Yeah.
E is going to be I think E is going to be important in the sense that we're developing fiscal responsibilities and plans for a very unknown situation. So it could be a great opportunity to showcase what we've been able to do without very much information from the State House. And then, I mean, A and D are always relevant, but definitely, Laura, your passionate plea for C really kind of won me over for that as being a top priority.
I think it's also something that can be more within the realm of the district, whereas with 2E, there are so many pressure points that
I know
we don't have control over.
any
That
control over.
And I mean, of all times, we are in a crisis, so yeah, there's an opportunity to reinvent and everything, but it's also a crisis, and so I think that being realistic, that are you going to be able to develop a budget that supports our vision in this environment when we get no control from what's coming down from the state or from federal? I mean, that's not that just doesn't hold water to me.
Yeah. So,
but concentrating on that maximum student access to quality instructional time and minimize school day disruptions. that calls out to me as the prime like mission for how to get this year going and have that opportunity. That's where I see the opportunity.
The reason why I would add A as well is you're doing this, like, and we should really be like, I'm definitely on board for C. I don't think adding A is like indicator creep, because we're not adding something that you're not doing, you know. And I think we should be assessing what you're doing.
Evidence for like more than evidence. In the assessment, I'm hoping Mary is helping you with the assessment of those plans. So, and I hope you guys are capturing her notes in a meaningful way, because then when you're providing that evidence, you're showing the plan, you're showing the revisions to the plan, you're showing the input from Mary, and then you're showing the revision after the input, right?
Oh yeah.
So should we move on to Linda's work on 3 and 4? I can keep sharing the screen, but I'll.
That's great.
I don't want to add citations.
I don't want to share how many tabs I have open.
So did my
even though I know I'm in good company.
I feel like tabs are like the cell phone thing now. Like either you have like 0 notifications on your phone, or you have 12,000. And so like I'm like Ken, I have like 5 tabs open. It's like 5 tabs are 50, and there's nowhere in between.
Yeah, and I've got them all categorized, so I don't want to like lose them. Okay, so what I was looking at last year for 3 for family and community engagement, I think we did all of them. We did all of them. And so for this discussion, I thought it might be useful to also look at what was done the year before, just to kind of guide that. So what called out to me was the was 3B, or was it? Sorry. Yeah, 3B. Monitors adherence to district-wide policies and practices that promote continuous collaboration with families to support student learning and development both at home and at school. I feel like that speaks for itself on why it called out to me, as evidenced by the collaborative identification of each student's academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs, and connecting families to the necessary resources and services within the school and the community to meet students' learning needs. So obviously we're collaborating with families in a whole new way and 5 days a week. And so I think that there should be a lot of evidence for this. And it's something that I think is part of what will build into that modern learning as well, or at least what might be changing going forward. I was thinking in part because B was done 2 years in a row. But to me, and please correct me if I have the sense wrong, A was looking more at how it's happening in the classroom and in the school community. And while that is happening under remote with the COVID restrictions, it seems like such an odd curveball to be looking at for providing evidence. But that was my take, and that could be completely off base. And then looking at C, engages in regular 2-way culturally proficient communication with families and community stakeholders about student learning and performance that is provided in multiple formats and reflects understanding of and respect for different families, home languages, culture, and values. Last year, I think that we focused a lot on the culturally proficient aspect, and I don't know if it's possible or appropriate to focus more on the regular and 2-way communication. Having said that, with the inclusion and diversity goals, it seemed to be on topic. And then family concerns. I felt like while that is going on in a lot of ways, like the what we were just talking about with 2A, I was mostly just thinking we got to streamline. And so, you know, these family concerns, this aspect is getting looked at in other ways. That was my thinking.
So Linda, your recommendation then at the bottom line is to do just B or to do B and C, or what is your recommendation?
What my recommendation is to do B and C. And then I was thinking that potentially instead of B, we could look at A. But I was pretty all in on this idea of we only pick 2 from this section, which that's from me. And I don't need to stick to it, but yeah, I was looking at B and C.
So what other folks think?
I would support B and, you said B and D, right? Yeah, B and D. I would support both.
B and C.
B, oh, C?
Mm-hmm.
See, I see D. I see D, family concerns, addressing family concerns. I saw that one as bolded, but that's the one I'm actually probably the most interested in seeing evidence of. I see that as responsive to family concerns and showing positive progress in the resolution of those concerns. So for me, I think D is even more pressing than B. I can see where communication, based on our prior conversations, C would be a priority as well. So I would say C and D.
For me, it's D this year. Like if we did nothing but D and did D well, then we're doing our job. With C, we're really talking about student learning and performance. And with the difference of student learning and the difference of what they may be performing, I feel like families want to know less about how their kid is doing in school academically and more about, is their kid safe? Is their kid engaged in the material? Does their kid have adequate opportunities to access the material, which I think really speaks to D, those concerns, right? Like I'm worried that my kid is not being taught by a real chemistry teacher this year, that they're going to get a computer program. I'm worried that my kid's IEP needs are not going to be met. So for me, like if we do D well, and I feel like D is done well if B is done well, and they're so interconnected. Mm-hmm. That if those responsibilities are shared and there's collaboration between the different principals and the different guidance counselors, we haven't touched upon the role that guidance counselors might have in part of this communication. If B is done well, then D happens in a natural way. So it's not just because they're both bolded, but really B and D are at the top of the list for me.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, so this is where I would love to hear your experience because I'm new to this angle completely. Those 2, B and D, were done 2 years in a row. Does that matter in this conversation?
I think it would have in the before times, but I think since the now times, like at least for me, the context is so different. I think it's okay. But I would agree with you if this is a normal year. And the reason I like B and D is I think they're going in 2 different directions. I think B is is addressing how the superintendent is monitoring policies. Again, not doing everything yourself, right? But monitoring policies, right, and practices to make sure that those underneath those who you lead, right, are doing this collaborative work. That's outgoing. I think D is being responsive when things are coming back at you. So I do think they're different. So I agree with Megan that if we do D well, we're probably doing B well because we didn't have as much D if B was done well, right? You know what I mean? Like there's not as many concerns if it went out right. But I do think they're structurally different enough. And again, I think they're things that like you're doing, right? I'm not saying, I don't think if we pick two indicators, I don't think in this case we're picking indicators where you're like, oh my goodness, now I've got to do something new this year of focus. I think we're just saying, at least for me, here's are the things that are important that you're doing this year, and let's assess those things. For me, the proficiency communication, culturally proficient communication, I think it's a little bit too soon. I think that maybe next year, just because hopefully you're going to get it right this year and you're going to execute it next year. I don't know. That was kind of what I was thinking with C, but
Yeah.
I don't know. But I kind of agree with Linda that B for me kind of jumped out too. Well, what would you think of B and D, Linda? Is that you probably thought about the most ahead of right now?
Yeah, I had actually in one draft of this, I had gone every possible direction of, or we could do this, or we could do this, or we could do this, and it just like, okay, focus. No, I absolutely see the direction here. I think that makes a lot of sense. I like the way that you're putting it to the two directions. That makes sense to me.
Is that 3D or is that's 4D, right?
Oh, what happened there?
Is that supposed to be a 3 or a 4?
Good noticing, Laura.
I was assuming it was 3,
It's
but
a
we should.
3.
I think it's
Yeah.
3.
It's a 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
probably just an auto. Could it be just an auto thing?
That's probably a bulleting thing. Yeah.
As I say that, we should probably make sure that that's.
No, I'm yep. I have
Okay.
the official printout. Yep.
Okay.
It is 3D. I still do better on paper than on screen. So.
I'm just gonna get these 4 if I can on one. It's like full. Do you want to walk us through 4?
Yeah. So for 4, okay. So this time, these were not all done last year. So the bolded are the ones from last year alone. And so for A, commitment to high standards, fosters a shared commitment to high standards of teaching and learning with high expectations for achievement for all, including mission and core values, meetings, etc. There's B, cultural proficiency, ensures that policies and practices enable staff members and students to interact effectively in a culturally diverse environment in which students' backgrounds, identities, strengths, and challenges are respected as evidenced by sufficient provision of guidance, supports, and resources. And that one, I think that, just jumping ahead a bit, I believe that one was one that I was thinking is too soon again. Much like the other ones that are talking about diversity and inclusion. Communications for C demonstrates strong interpersonal written and verbal communication skills as evidenced by regular and informative outreach to staff, families, and community members and to the school committee in a manner that advances the work of the district, regularly seeks and considers feedback in decision making. Continuous learning develops and nurtures a culture in which staff members are reflective about their practice and use student data, current research, best practices, and theory to continuously adapt instruction and achieve improved results. And then for E, shared vision, continuously engages all stakeholders in the creation of or commitment to a shared educational vision focused on student preparation for college and career readiness, and so on. I think actually, Ken, do you mind scrolling down? I think I had put my, right, if there's, oh, there is an F, isn't there? Yep. And then managing conflict. So what I was thinking was that for C, to use for C, the communication indicator, because again, this is something that you're doing, that you have to do, and then some, right, with this remote and hybrid situation. And that's a common theme that comes up in our discussions. And there should be solid evidence to back it up too. And then I was looking at shared vision because of looking forward to starting up work on the new strategic plan. With and the beginning parts of that work. For right, and for B, that one was the one that I said was too early, right? Yeah, the cultural proficiency I think is too early. So my recommendations would be to do C and E, and I welcome your thoughts.
So what do folks think?
I mean, just kind of honing on what Linda said. Sorry, it's getting late. Communications for sure. I mean, we hear about that on a daily basis, and that shared vision. I don't really think, not that this is not the year for continuous learning, but I almost feel like next year is going to be our year of learning and reflection, where the professional development that we need as a district is not developed yet, because we're all kind of flying by the seat of our pants. So really kind of C and E stand out to me. I mean, F as well in the before times maybe, but I feel like in the now times, we're really focused on C and E.
Laura, what are your thoughts?
I can get behind C with the communications. But I think actually D, there's a real opportunity here. We have Wednesdays that have been set aside for professional development all year long, and I'd love to see what evidence comes from that work that supports this indicator. I mean, we've made a huge commitment every Wednesday for the entire school year to have continuous learning, professional development for our teachers. And I think that we ought to see some product from that, and I think this speaks to that.
That's probably what I would have said as well. I mean, I think C definitely. D was probably my second choice for those same reasons. And I think the other thing I think in listening to what Laura was saying as we were going through the goals, I think that, and what I've heard the past 2 years on this committee too, was talking about the superintendent showing leadership to create an environment where things happen, right? And to some degree, the PD is for the teachers, but that's also not just the teachers, that indicator, right? It's also your administrators. So I think in the goals, if you do your goals right, because some weakness I think we've had in the past when we pick indicators is the indicators and the goals don't go together. I think that this indicator goes with that aspect of the goals. I have nothing against E. I worry that we're just getting through this year. Maybe that's not where, I hate to say that because it seems like we're shortcutting our students, but it seems like I don't know, it might be hard to judge. But I that's just my 2 cents. I don't know.
You know what though, Ken?
Yeah.
That just reminded me when I was looking at that was before we, when I initially was making this suggestion, it was before we looked at the goals, right? And so I knew we had talked about the strategic goals, but that was with the idea of not knowing where that part would land by the end of this year. And I think looking at what that, how we've talked about that goal since, I would agree that shared vision doesn't quite make sense for this year with the strategic plan gonna, you know, where it's gonna land by the end of this cycle. And I think, Laura, your point about the Wednesdays professional development commitment, that makes a lot of sense for D.
Making you shaking your head, is that just
No, a positive shaking. I don't know why I didn't connect the Wednesdays to that, but yeah, that makes sense to me as well.
Can I ask something real quickly?
sure?
Ah, thanks. I found the blurred background, by the way, now. I'm not using it, but I found it. It's my impression as a teacher, if you will, that the Wednesday half days, we were told that they were flex days, not necessarily PD days. So we were specifically told that they were not to be called that because they weren't necessarily professional development days. So I don't know if that has something to do if that has something to do with this, but just I don't know, Daryl. I don't know if you're have anything to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, the way it's broken down, it's 25, 25, 50. So it's, you have half the time is time teachers have to plan to work together and so forth. And then a quarter of the time is PD owned by the district, and a quarter of the time is PD owned by the school.
In the school reopening plans, it's labeled as professional development
Yep.
on the kids' calendars. I don't know if that's just a communications issue, but
Yeah.
Okay, so they're PD, correct?
Yeah, it's still PD. It still counts as that.
Okay, thanks.
so Daryl, do you have any objections to? I've lost track of letters. It's getting late. C and D.
No, those are fine.
Okay. And Laura, you have that for the minutes, right?
Yeah, can I just confirm that I heard them correctly?
Sure.
All right, so for instructional leadership, I'm hearing 1B on instruction and 1A on curriculum. I don't know why I have those in reverse. Okay, we'll fix that. Oh, because they were written that way. Okay. And then for management and operations, I have 2A on environment and 2C on scheduling and management information systems.
Mm-hmm.
Family and community engagement is 3B, sharing responsibility, and 3D, family concerns. And then 4 is for professional culture is 4C on communications and 4D on continuous learning.
So we focused, I mean, it's a nice symmetry to have 2 per standard. That's 8 out of 21. It's not 4 out of 21, but it's not 21 out of 21, which we've done, by the way, in the past.
In the before times.
In the before times, yeah. I think the first year we had this document, we were under the mistaken impression that we had to do all of them. So that makes sense to me. And we got something done on our agenda. All right, because I think that's important, because then Barry from the technical side and Daryl from the conceptual side, what I would suggest you start thinking about doing, right, is as you write your monthly reports, to be putting aside what are the data from this month, from these 2 weeks that support these indicators, right, going back to the beginning of the year, so that when you write this at the end, you know, it's kind of like it's an iterative process, right?
Right.
And you can almost even just, instead of going back and determining, you know, let's make sure I hit these, like just go through your report and just label them. Just put the little 2A, 4A, whatever it is, and just put the little delineation there, and then you're ready to roll.
It's all tied back together.
When I see 4C on communications, there's a part there where it talks about communication with the school committee and that advances the work of the district. I mean, I would think that our requests for information and the dates and the subject and the resolution to those requests would be a perfect some perfect evidence to put in there.
That sounds perfect.
And the same thing, I guess, too, once those goals are approved, just mark them the same way, right? Like, it might be 4A, comma, goal 1.
Yep.
Right? 2C, comma, goal 2.
So speaking of goals, I originally had a goal to get this done by 8:30, which we failed at. So maybe we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the 360-degree feedback process. I will give a brief update. I reached out to Harvard and Danvers, which was my task. Harvard says we don't know what you're talking about. People have been here for 15 years. Say there's no history of that here, and to tell MASS to stop telling people that. And not in a bad way, but you might want to tell MASS to stop telling people that. And then Danvers did do it. They discontinued it when the new DESI things came in. When they did do it, this is the superintendent who's talking to me now, and not the school committee chair, because they passed it off to her. And she said that the previous superintendent hired a consultancy to come in and design the questions. And the last thing I asked her was, who was that? I just imagine she's either looking for that or maybe doesn't know, or maybe is busy, but or all of the above. So so there was the history of it in Danvers, but they haven't done it, in a while, and not with their current superintendent. But so the only take home I have is that superintendent did hire an outside consultant to help formulate that work. I also was going to possibly reach out to the North Dakota people. I found from the thing that Mike had shared with us at the beginning of the year, I went to that organization and their website doesn't quite work anymore. So I have to imagine that particular bit of that group is potentially gone. I mean, North Dakota still has a really good page for their superintendent and teacher assessments, just like most states do. But the link to that particular forum was a dead link. It could be an internet thing, or it could be that they took it away. So I wasn't jumping up and down about reaching out to them, but we could. I almost think at this point, maybe a more local person would be better. I don't want to get into a super long discussion about this tonight because it's getting late, but what has anyone else had any thoughts or actions from this? Laura?
Yeah, so question that I had, so in our last discussion, when we were talking about this, it got me thinking that several years ago, I remember there was something called a TELMAS survey, and I think it's been discontinued. I don't think we do that anymore. It was part of
It has. Yeah, it's all done.
But I'm wondering, I think that we as a district already use the Panorama survey. I don't know if this tool that we use has some capacity to be able to be employed for this purpose. I don't know enough about it, but I looked. It doesn't.
No.
Okay.
No.
So I mean, I guess I'm left wondering if nobody's using this, it's not a model that's out there. We can find resources and so on and so forth. I'm just wondering if this is, something where if we really want to do this, we're going to have to recreate some wheel that may or may not be round enough to actually move us forward. So I just don't know where we're at, where this leads us.
I guess one of the things I'll just say to you from, sitting in this seat, well, not my couch, but at my superintendent's position, is if, the school committees, you are my boss and you are also the people who evaluate me. So I think there's a reason why this doesn't happen. There's a reason why there isn't this constant kind of outreach to see what all these other people are saying and how I think also what happens is, and this is just kind of not a forewarning, but when I'm not here anymore, it's not attractive. I wouldn't put my name in to apply for a position that had that type of evaluation tool, in all honesty. And I'm just saying that honestly, I think it's a little bit of a turnoff in that sense. 22 people is a turnoff to begin with as a school committee, so no one wants that part of it. But then you throw in this other part, it just makes it. I don't know. You don't want to. And again, I look at it and just say it's not happening anywhere else. That's kind of the reality, and there's a reason why.
So why don't can I suggest this bit of homework, at least so that we don't talk about it more tonight, is there's that Hanover report, right? And I'm sorry, Laura, if it was you or Kelly, I don't remember who sent us a report last time that took some quotes from a different Hanover report. But there's a Hanover report in the shared drive, right, about the implementation of this sort of stuff in school districts from the past. Let's if we can agree to read that for next time, and then maybe we'll have a little bit more time since the indicators are done and the goals will be mostly done to talk about that. If that's okay with people, I want to talk about our next meeting. I think we should think about two. I think if we're going to do, we talked about doing one next week, right? If we need to, I think that should be short and sweet. Its sole purpose is to finalize these goals, hopefully, assuming that they're in good shape. I think we need to look forward to a next meeting whose topics could be this 360-degree review, but I think also need to be talking about structures of evaluations, right? So mid-year evaluation, which is probably not going to be in the middle of the year this year, and end-of-year evaluation. But I think we're actually required to do both, right? There has to be some mid-year process. So even if it's not, as I say, in the middle of the year, it has to be done. So I would think those could be our agenda items for next time, probably in that reverse of that order of figuring out what the year looks like and what the mid-year looks like, when it looks like, and then returning to the Hanover report for the 360.
And just one little thing as well.
Please.
Has DESI, and I don't think they have, Daryl, put out any guidance regarding evaluation of superintendents this year in that, of course, Namadocs, nothing yet, right? I didn't know
Nothing,
the
no.
process was being changed.
Nothing. Yep.
He has been the biggest pain all night. Every time I've gotten up, it's because he's needed to go out. So he is on my list right now.
Okay.
So I want to get off of Megan's list quickly. So what do we think about a time frame for that meeting? To me, and I'm just trying to put myself into Daryl's shoes here, like I think November 18th is one of those dates on your calendar where maybe we shouldn't be doing something else right before it. But I don't want to get too deeply into December before we set what the mid-year evaluation would be, because typically that's been actually in December. I know it's not going to be this year, but it feels like, you know, we can't drift too far. So I don't know what people are.
I mean, I just also want to give the what if scenario of what if the committee does not approve the goals on the 9th.
Well, then we need a different time
Then
for a
we need
meeting. Yeah.
kind of meeting, but
Yeah.
you know, maybe that first week in December if everything's going smoothly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Again, we can always call another meeting if the committee doesn't approve the goals, but you can just say it's all my fault. I won't be there, and you know.
Do you want to do the second?
The second is currently fine for me.
Yeah, me too. It's a good.
Do we want to do 6:30?
I like that.
Okay, I was going to say, I think I was the one pushing for 6:30, but I can do 6 in December if that helps. But whatever.
6 is tough for me, I have to say. Cause,
Yeah,
Never mind.
Yeah, 6:30 is fine.
And I put it 6:30 to 8 on my work calendar. That's my intention for that meeting, and not 6:30 to 8:52. So are we good?
Yeah,
And Laura, can you share your draft minutes with Rebecca so she has all the dates?
Yes.
Yeah, Ken, I've already texted Rebecca both dates.
Okay, great.
Can I just ask you a process question since you're not
Sure.
going to be at the full committee meeting? Will I be, I assume that Daryl will be reporting out on his goals and action steps. So I would be reporting out on the indicators.
Yes, I think that, so Megan, this is really a question for you in terms of agenda setting. I would think that, so the indicators are just under the report, so that doesn't need a motion, right? So yes, I would report out on the indicators. The goals, what we've done in the past is we've actually done this in 2 meetings. We've said, here are your goals, what's your feedback, and let's vote on them the next time. I don't know how we want to operate that.
I would almost share them. If we approve the goals, then I would share them in advance, you know, either per the superintendent's report or per something I could send out. I think we're so tight on time at this point that waiting a second meeting to vote on them would be troublesome.
So so I would say something to the effect of like that the subcommittee has met, we've reviewed, revised with the superintendent, and we fully support the final draft that's being presented tonight. And then,
absolutely. And I think that's kind of how other subcommittees operate, right? So they, you know, if they are in favor of it as a committee, then typically you get the full committee support. And so like if you wanted Laura to just kind of detail the process, like what you did first and then second and then third, I think it also helps for the full committee to see that you've gone through your due diligence and this didn't just happen in a single meeting.
So I think we would need a motion, Megan, right?
I would definitely appreciate having a motion previous to the full meeting. So
Right,
maybe
so it'd be,
that short meeting on that Thursday.
but I mean, we would have a motion on your agenda for that school
Yeah, on my
committee.
agenda to approve the goals.
And I think it'll be up to you as chair to make sure that we don't get into like wordsmithy and that we ideally don't make, now I won't be there, but I can envision a circumstance where there's so many amendments that it just gets bleary. So I think, as Megan said wisely.
So for me, it's either you're going to vote these goals up or you're going to vote them down. We're not here to wordsmith them. If you feel that they are so inadequate that they need to be revised, please give us your very strong feedback and we will do so. But I'm not there to put periods and commas in different places. The amendments would have to be very substantial. And I feel like it would not behoove the superintendent to amend his goals live on a meeting and then have them have to follow them. That's disingenuous because they're not our goals, they're his goals, and we're simply approving them or not.
So Laura, to your question, and Megan as chair can really have this final thing, is I think that you would make the motion, and then if you seconded, and then I would assume that Megan will let Daryl talk since they're his goals, and then I think you would get the floor next since you made the motion to talk about process.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct. I would prefer that.
Okay.
Great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
So do we need to adjourn?
Yeah, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and it's been seconded, Linda?
Seconded. Yep, second.
All right, we'll go roll call. Laura?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
And I'm also yes, so we're adjourned. Thank you so much, and have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you all.
Okay.